Greetings, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining me again for today's discussion. What I'd like to cover today is roots, and in particular, the concept of, or particularly the concept of building a strong foundation as we deal with roots. We have to look at different ways that we weather storms and different ways that we really do need our foundations, our foundational roots in order to thrive in life and sort of learning how to build those foundations with intention and learning how to build them in a way where we're unpacking our values or our core integrities. We're unpacking them together as a group. Oftentimes, again, living in such an individualistic society, there's a huge stress on what we do ourselves, for ourselves, by ourselves. And the interdependencies of a natural life just do not work that way. There's no component in your body that works by itself. There's an interdependence. For those of you who are traditional supporters, watchers, listeners, I say welcome. And for those of you who do not know who I am Chief Yuya. And as a spiritual teacher or spiritual educator, as a spiritual guide, and even in the work I do in terms of business development and organizational development and change management and executive coaching, I have always seen just how essential it is to have a strong foundation in one's personal, spiritual, and even communal life. And sometimes we're facing the uncertainty of change in life. I think right now for a lot of people who are maybe closely tied to the Western political system, they're feeling a great sense and urge of uncertainty, or waves of uncertainty. And then sometimes we're just facing growth. If we grow, we're going to change. If we change, we're going to grow. They just come along hand in hand. Or sometimes we're just facing our regular old challenges in life. We come through life. Coming into the world is a challenge. Walking through the world is a challenge. Leaving the world is a challenge. And even the mental conceptualization of what the world will be or could be a challenge. But when we start to grow deep roots in life, those deep roots allow us the stability and the strength in order to be able to persevere what those challenges may be. So what I'd like to do in this session, I think it's going to be an easy follow along. The last few sessions I've really tried to make them easy follow alongs because we're building our foundations for our 9. We're building our foundations for our 9 years. So I want to give some very practical steps on how we can build a strong foundation and how we can reflect on wisdom from a lot of the deep thinking and deep thought elders who have presented us such prolific bodies of information already in the past that unfortunately sometimes we skip over. We have like the Tibetan Book of the Dead. In our last session, I spoke about the Book of Changes, which many of you may know as the I Ching, and how, or even the Quran. And I want to look at how those ancient traditions, they sort of connect to universal truths. Sometimes, like I said, there's often confusion around the interconnectedness of systems, but these are root systems. And when you understand something about plants, for those of you who have house plants, those of you who garden, or those of you who, maybe even have orchids or orchards and you grow some kind of trees, that roots tend to interconnect and they find stability in their interconnection. There's so many different ways that we can use deep thought that came before to deepen our understanding of certain concepts. My goal at the end is not always to destroy you. It's always, that's the beginning, to destroy your brain, recreate a new one, but it's to leave you with some tools and it's to leave you with some insights to help you deepen your roots and to grow stronger in what we would call your everyday walk or your everyday life, and you know, sometimes because we look at things as a monolith in this society, we don't understand by sort of cross functioning throughout different knowledge systems and deep thought systems that we can actually strengthen and highlight the importance of having roots. Some people think if you just do one thing or you just learn one thing, that creates more of a metaphorical righteousness within yourself. They'll hold up one book and say, well, I know if it ain't in this book, I don't want to hear it. And there are practices and there is information for sheep like people, and there is information for people who have the ability and the capacity to pull away from the herd, because by pulling away from the herd, you then find new ground to graze. You say, hey, we can eat over here too. The grass is good here too. The waters are peaceful over here too. And sometimes that requires a little bit of thinking outside of the herd mentality. There is value in the herd. There's protection in the herd. So I am not discrediting that at all. But if you think about roots, you think of a tree, and I want you to visualize a tree that stands very tall and stands very proud. And one of the first things I want you to look at that tree in your mind, or maybe you can look out your window and see one, and you think about is that the strength of that tree, it doesn't come from its leaves or its branches. Those are the things that we look at and say, wow, look at that, and look at the shape and the color of the leaves, but that's not where the strength actually comes from. The strength of that tree comes from what's hidden beneath the soil. So the strength of this beautiful, tall, proud thing that you're looking at comes from the roots that are hidden. And those roots, they absorb nutrients for the tree. Those roots, they anchor the tree. And most importantly, when storms come, those roots keep that tree upright. Okay, so it's very similar in our own lives. We all have some form of root or roots, right? And our roots tend to be our values. Our roots tend to be what we believe or what we know as our knowledge system. Most importantly, our roots are our connections, our relationships. These are our roots. And so these are the things that keep us grounded. These are the things that keep us nourished, those roots. So without roots, even the tallest tree, right? It could be the most tallest, amazing tree that you look at, but when a strong wind will come, that tree will get toppled. So the strength of our spirit life, our spiritual strength, our emotional strength, they are pulled from our roots, and they play the same exact role. They help us to stay steady when life challenges us. So when we're faced with strong winds, or we're faced with challenges or strong fears or strong anxieties or strong change, whatever it is, it's our roots that keep us from breaking and from toppling. That's the most important thing I want you to remember. So there are times when we are uprooted, and we need to be uprooted, but we have to take a look at, again, the value systems. What are we pulling from? What are we pointing to? It makes me think about, there was a movement, a very, very significant and important movement for those who we would consider to be melanin-rich individuals in the North Americas around the 1800s. And it was a movement that was called the Back to Africa movement. And what was very interesting about this movement is that how it captured really the hearts of so many different people, and in particularly the people around the Arkansas area of North America. They were really motivated by their political situation. They were really motivated by the social conditions that were a product of systemic racism and white supremacy, or supposed white supremacy. And they were coming off of these really lopsided, unfair, and unjust conditions from the Reconstruction era in America, North America. And so what happened was, around that time, there were thousands of Africans in America, or melanin-rich individuals, who made the decision, or they looked to leave the oppressive bondage of Mitzrayim, or of the United States of America. And they wanted to leave that bondage, and they were really looking for the promise of a better life, right? So they looked towards Liberia, right? And they considered Liberia to be their ancestral homeland. And what I always found very interesting about this whole movement, and again, the folks coming from Arkansas, or Arkansas, I think about William Rogers. And William Rogers was an individual who, was a part of that movement, what we call the Back to Africa. And I want to be clear when I'm saying Back to Africa, because part of that is a trick as well, to trick you out of the best part of the planet Earth. The original man knows to settle on the best part. So this idea always that, we all came from Africa. It's just not accurate. It's not historically accurate. It's not factual. It's not true. And it's an attempt to localize you to one place while another group of people seeks to steal your land. There's no way that Columbus could have came over here and said that, hey, he needed these two Moorish navigators because they have been to this land before. So how is it that you discover a place that other people have already been, and you need those people to bring you, or you can't make it? It's just a lot of the lies and foolishness. But I'm using the term Back to Africa because that's what the movement was called, right? So if you want to look up that information and verify what I'm saying, look up the 1800s Back to Africa movement, and African Americans, I guess they would call them, moving to Liberia. So at that time you had, like I said, William Rogers, and he described Liberia as the only, as the colored man's only home. He said it's the only place on earth where the colored man can have equal rights. So you think about that experience that Rogers went through, man, and the active knowledge, truth, and courage that was required for these people to say, man, I'm going to uproot. I'm going to plant new roots in a foreign land. Even if I see it as my ancestral home, this place is all I know, and I'm going to get up and leave. And even when they left, man, it wasn't smooth sailing. They faced some serious challenges, man, from disease. There were a lot of economic challenges, a lot of economic struggles, and they also had to deal with the new climate, and understanding how to be within that climate. But one of the things that they noted was that even with all the struggles that they were going through, and the uprooting and all of that it was still better than, they said they still found peace in living in freedom and not being under the ever looming shadow of white supremacy racism. So for me, that whole experience in that story, it always really deeply resonated with me, because it reminded me, and maybe it can do the same for you, that sometimes in building a strong foundation, it requires the courage and the bravery to leave behind what no longer serves you. And it highlights that our roots are not just about the places that we've been. Sometimes we always use our history. When someone says something to us, or we speak about values, we always say, well, this is how I was raised. or this is what my grandma taught me, or this is what my mama taught me, this is what my daddy taught me, this is what I've always done, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those should be the values that you root yourself in. Our roots are not just about where we've been, but our roots are about where we choose to grow. That's the highest vibration of your roots. Reconnecting with spiritual and cultural roots, or spiritual and cultural identity, for me, has always shown me that roots begin beneath the surface. Just like those who had the courage and who had the fortitude to say, man, let's seek out a new beginning. Yeah, Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, these areas, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, these are the only places that we've known. And many of those who look like us would argue that they are a manufactured product of this place called America. I'm an American, I'm a proud American, I'm a Negro American, Black American, African American, right? All of those terms were not necessarily used back then. It was colored, but they still had the fortitude, and the bravery to say, let's seek out a new beginning. Let's choose where we will root. I think that's a very important concept, because right now we have so much talk going around about high value. I did a segment on that some time ago, and I think the title was So Now You Are a High Value Man, which was really a rhetorical question. But there's so many people who speak about, I want a high value man, I want a high value woman, I'm a high value man, I am a high value, I'm a P31 woman, Proverbs 31, I'm a P31, this, so forth and so on. But your values are really where your roots are. Your values are not just like with your income level, or you work out, or you're a certain height, or you don't have children, or you do have children, or, your values are where your root comes from. I could have 2 cents in my pocket, and if my values are rooted in kindness, if my values are rooted in righteousness, if my values are rooted in the laws of the Most High, these are high values. These are high vibrational values. So therefore, that would make me a high value man. You see, I don't determine and reference my value by what Babylon says high value is. I reference my value by the quality of my roots. Because when something comes, whether it be another pandemic or whether it be another market crash, these are the values that are going to keep me from toppling over and breaking and losing my mind and cracking up. It makes me think about the I Ching hexagram 48, which is Jing. They call it the well. And the well, or Jing, the well is a source of life, and it reminds us of the source of life. But we draw from it and we protect it. So not only do you draw from your roots and from your values when required, and it's not a one-time thing. Like, you don't drink water once, you don't go to the well once, but you go from it to it continually, and you continually tend to your inner resources. You have to tend to your roots. Just like if you're growing a plant. I have a plant right now I got to do some work on. I just got to get around to it. I got to repot it because I went away some time ago and I overfilled it and the roots rotted. I know it's root rot. So I got to replant it. I got to take that soil out, put some good soil in there, and replant it, right? So when we tend to our roots, we can ensure that our foundations thrive and that they remain strong and that they remain supportive. So when we're drawing from the well, right, like Jing says, 48th hexagram, it's an act of truth, an act of faith, but it's also a commitment to taking care of our roots. It's not a one-time action. In fact, it's a continual process, and it's an action that inspires. Like when you go and visit your elders. You notice how inspiring that it is? You know, whether it's your old aunt, old uncle, old grandma, old grandpa, or just whoever, old neighbor. It could be anybody. The activities are always the most boring of activities, right? Like technically. We just sat there, or I helped them clean or whatever it is. It's going to be something like nothing. Like we were sitting there watching some court show, Judge Mathis, and just talking. But you gain so much inspiration. When you walk out the door, you feel like a renewal because you just went to the well. You just went to the source, So there is an accommodation there of discerning that an elder will give you in those moments. Sometimes you may speak about something that you're going through when you're at the well that you think is so complex. And while your elder is watching TV or something, they'll just say something really quick. Yeah, that's like such and such and such. And it sticks with you. It could be the simplest thing. The hexagram before that one, we have like biting, zangwa in the I Ching, biting through. And that's the hexagram of discernment when you bite through. So you see sort of the book of changes, it shows you a movement of thought, a movement of the soul. But you can spend your entire lifetime and still never come close to exhausting all of the resources that are inside the well. That's why every time you go to your elders, they may tell you the same story over and over again, as they tend to do, but you'll always hear something extra. Or if you ask a question, there'll be something there that you're like, what? It'll be this extra little, like, interesting detail. They could tell you all the time about how they got a sale on something and bought a car or something. And then they'll be like, yeah, and Martin Luther King was there at the lot and he was handing out flyers. What? You never said Martin Luther King was at the lot. There's always, because the well is representative also of what's inside of us. It's an inexhaustible resource that always has something to give. Your vision only starts to become clear in life when you develop the ability to look inside of the well of your own heart. It was Carl Jung who said that those who look outside, they dream, and those who look inside, they awake. So you start to see the value there of going to the well. The well being your roots, not only the representation of the reservoir of unconscious activity that we have in us. And that unconscious activity is not just all good stuff. Your unconscious activity are also your fears. Your unconscious activities are also your inspiration. So they both live within the well itself. But the only time that you can awaken to the true value of your roots is when you go inside and take a look. And then you start to realize, like, oh man, like, this doesn't end. This doesn't end. Some people love their quiet time of meditation. And you may have some people they were children. They were 5, 6 years old, and they would just like to sit and maybe look at the fireplace or look outside the window at 5, 6 years old. Now they're 70, 80 years old. They like to just sit, look outside the window, look outside, look at the fire, look at the candle. Because it's a world inside of them that is so vast that they've spent their entire lifetime exploring it. And they're still inspired by it. When you look at the symbology that you could interpret for the well, the deepness of our roots, oftentimes we could look at a town, right? Someone can come through, marauders can come through and set a town ablaze. They could knock down every building, burn everything all around. You know what doesn't change? The well. the well is still going to be there. Everyone's running around screaming, the pirates are coming, the Moors are coming, they're tearing everything up, the Vikings, the Moorish Vikings, they're tearing everything up. The well is like, yeah, when y'all get through that, when y'all are done and you're thirsty, I'll be here. So the well is never exchanged. It's never changed, regardless of what's happening on the surface. And there's deep, complex ideas and situations a lot of times in our life that require time to understand. And the well allows for that time of stillness to get things. It's just the same thing when you speak to older people. No matter what the economy is doing or politics are doing, when they get to a certain age where it's, I just go into my garden, I grow my greens, or grandpa just likes a nice good cigar. He wants to watch the game, or do his crossword puzzle. Grandma just wants to grow her beans and her tomatoes in the yard, and she don't pay attention to it. I go inside, I lock my door, and that's that. Because they now represent that deep well where regardless of what's happening on the outside, they're not going to change. There's a depth of feeling that can oftentimes be overwhelming initially when you live on the outside. And when you tap into the well, it requires an honest communication. And that honest communication, it allows you to maintain clarity and avoid misunderstandings. You ever notice and I'm going to keep using elders as an example, they don't respond to your complex talk. Make it simple and make it plain. And they know when you're lying. When they ask you, how's everything, you lie. They know you're lying. You can't really, a real elder. I'm not talking about just an older person just walking around being old and simple. I ain't talking about that. They not really, yeah. I'm talking about an elder. Pay attention to the EL in there. El, just like, your angelic beings that have El in their name, or Allah, which is El, or Elf, or, Alder, like we say alderman, comes from elderman, or elder woman. So an elder is actually a very spiritual and divine position, to be an elder. It's like being an Elohim, but when we're tapped into the deep wisdom of the elder, we're tapped into transforming connections, deeper connections. They represent our deep inner resources that we have that allow us to meet our challenges. They help us to learn how to encourage our own intuition and how to encourage our own inability to sustain ourselves, rather than always relying on logic, always relying on knowledge, right? Elders are typically not moved by that. They are moved by the fact that you finished school and got your degree. They don't really care about what the degree is. Oh, I know she went to school for business. Well, yeah, Grandma, it's business analytics. Well, okay, I know something in business. Well, this one went to school for business administration. It was business management. What's the difference? What are we talking about here? They don't care. They're just proud of you because you started something and you finished it. But all the other stuff that you talk about, nobody gives a crap, because they're not moved by the logic and the reason. They're moved by the deep ability to tap into complex concepts that require an inner journey, that tighten and strengthen intuition. So there's a nourishment that comes from the authentic expression that we tap into the well. When you can have authentic communications with those who you relate to. When you can't, you always notice that you're always very thirsty and starving for connection. I'll get into that in a moment, maybe in another segment. That desire. Israel is always thirsty for connections. That's why we always mate ourselves to the wrong people, because we want family so bad. So we're always connecting ourselves to foreign, strange people that destroy us. I'll get into that. But when you're going through that inner journey, and you're going through a journey that leads to greater expression, greater nourishment, you start to tap into the inexhaustible resources within the psyche. You're requiring a level of self-discovery and sacrifice. You can't grow without sacrifice and self-discovery. There are so many people who try to skip the surface of that. They want to grow, but at the same time, they don't want to change anything. They don't want to let go of anything. They don't want to accept or own anything about themselves. And I'm telling you, just in my position as a spiritual guide, and even as a harem head, I deal with that often. I've had so many people come to me who've had lifelong issues at 30, 40 years old. They've been acting a certain dysfunctional way their entire life. And their life reflects it. Then I say something and they say, well, no one's ever told me that. You're lying. So the ability to observe guidance and insight in life in one's path is necessary if you want to really. There's got to be a self-awareness for self-development. There's got to be that for transformation. So when we start going into our roots, what we start doing is we start encouraging turning inward. When we're oppressed outwardly, we tend to turn inward. That's why a lot of times the most oppressed people create the greatest art, because that outward oppression now causes that person to turn inward and look inside and they don't become overly focused on knowledge, because maybe their oppression blocks them from real knowledge. There's things they don't know and things that are being kept secret from them. But the truth is, when we have an overly sort of enthusiasm and we're overly focused on knowledge or reason, it hinders self-growth. Like, you can't do art when you're so focused on what the art is. Oh, this is this type of thing, or this that style, or that style. You can't create anything like that. So when we start to reflect on how our changes in our external begin to create experiences that now bring on inner cultivation, we start to see the value more of going to the roots, going to our source values, going to our well. I think about the element of water. For those of you who connect with water, water represents, or can, again, you interpret symbols however you want. I don't want to say it's this, it's that, because that blocks, or could possibly block you from the blessing and the advantage of having a personal relationship with a symbol or experience for yourself. When it comes to symbol, no one can tell you right or wrong. It's however you take it. Because sometimes we create our new language, a different language through the symbol. Now, I'm not speaking about words. Sometimes people are too lazy to understand what a word means. So they'll say, well, it means this to me. Why can't I make it mean that? Well, you can if you want to be stupid, and you're unable to really communicate with other people, sure. And then you get an attitude where someone says, it doesn't mean that. Well, that's to you. But when it comes to a symbol, that's when you can express and have all the artistic freedom you want. But oftentimes water can be seen as the unseen, if you will, or the unknown, or the potential of power that lies within. That's why we have so many mythologies that are associated with water, where there's a hero's journey that someone goes on, and they have to go down into the water to uncover some sort of hidden treasure that's deep down in the water somewhere. It's the well, right? It's the well all over again. It's that unchanging nature of the well that allows us to hold our glory or to hold our treasure. So we may go through all kinds of situations in life, man, whether it be different trauma, different abuse, different really stupid decisions that we make that brings on trauma and abuse, but deep down our treasure is never affected. It's never affected. The treasure is still good. There are enduring aspects to us that resist change. There are parts of us that need to accept change, and there are parts of us that, whether we like it or not, they ain't changing. They resist change. And sometimes we lump the things that need to be changed with the things that will not change. So a lot of times, some of our deep rooted fears or our deep rooted doubts in our relationships or in our self expression, we try to put down into our treasure chest. It's like, no, that doesn't belong in there. Often we need to highlight the need for others to approach us in a way to access our depths and to access our wisdoms. Sometimes people's approach isn't right. We all have wells inside of us. And when we enter into valuable relationships, part of our job is to teach people how to access our well. Not just our surface. Oh, this is how you make me feel like that. This is my spot. This is how you make me laugh. Okay, that's cool. How do I get to your well? How do I get to your well? Right? There are people who are highly inspired individuals. And sometimes people who are highly inspired, whether they be artists or spiritualists, they also often fall victim to illusions. And we have to use the wells. We go deep to know inspiration from illusion. I know for me as a person who works in the spiritual world a lot, and people who come to me for spiritual help, they want everything validated. And sometimes people come and say, man, I had a vision of this, and I saw this, and I saw that. And they don't want to hear, you're delusional. It doesn't work that way. Because they find themselves highly inspired all the time, and they want every feeling that they have or every experience to be validated. And some of it isn't, because they haven't tapped into the deep well. They haven't gone to the elder who's going to look at them like, give them that Samuel Jackson look like, knock a what? We all need that. So to access our potential, we have to go inward. We just have to. And we have to sacrifice the familial or our familiarity that we think we have for transformation. It may look completely different than what's getting ready to happen, what's going down, if you will. Self-discovery and sincerity are the keys to unlocking the Tao, or unlocking the road, or unlocking the way. It has to begin there. And so many people, they want to skip over self-discovery, and they want you, well, you tell me. I get that one a lot. Well, Chief, I know you know what the problem is. You tell me. You tell me. I know you know what your problem is. You're hoping that you can hide some things, and maybe there's 10 things wrong with you, and I'm only going to say 7 of them, so you can keep the other 3. But then when I say, no, you tell me what the issue is, people get frustrated, because now you have to take accountability for your own self-awareness. It was Khalil Gibran that said in the book, The Prophet, he said, your soul is oftentimes a battlefield upon which your reason and your judgment wage war against your passions and your appetite. And he said, would that I be the peacemaker of your soul, that I might turn the discord inside of you and the rivalry of your elements into oneness and melody. So it's a concept there, like, I can't be the peacemaker of your soul. Like you have to take on that accountability. But it goes back to what I was speaking about in our last session when I spoke about I think it was changing times. I think that was the last session. But I spoke about the importance of internal balance, right? And that internal balance within, it's one of our strongest keys to have a strong foundation. How do we reconcile our inner conflicts? How do we create harmony and strength? The only way you can have harmony and strength in your life, externally or internally, is when you reconcile your inner conflicts. Like Khalil Gibran was speaking about. You have to reconcile the inner conflicts. And sometimes, unfortunately, many of us, like I said, we seek to skip past that reconciliation. We want to use magic. I get that one a lot. Chief, can you give me a ritual? I need a ritual because I got this going on and this isn't normal and I haven't always been like this and that. Yeah, well, life changes. I wasn't always the way I am. I have certain kind of dreams now that I didn't have when I was younger. I have certain kind of visions now. I have fears that try to come into my life that I didn't have fears of when I was younger. You know, if I'm standing on a high fence wall and somebody says jump down, I think twice now. Let me try to turn around and slide down a little bit and scrape up the whole front of my shoe or something. But I think I'd rather do that than jump, because first thing's going to happen, I'm break my ankle. I've never broken my ankle in my life. I've twisted my ankle, but I've never broken my ankle. But that's a fear that I never had before. I think about bones breaking. I've never broken a bone. I've never had a broken, or I don't think, although I think I got a finger that I broke that never came back right. It's a little crooked, but whatever, it's all right. I can make mostly a fist. But our fears and our thoughts change. You know, the Torah, it teaches us in Proverbs 12:3, no one can be established through wickedness, but it's through righteousness that cannot be uprooted. You know, so we start to see that in that proverb, you know, when we stand in righteousness, we cannot be uprooted. But the wickedness is you going against nature, or the wickedness is you allowing inner conflict, inner war. Well, that's just the way I am. You know, I'm multidimensional. You know, I can be classy, but then I curse your ass out. You know, that kind of thinking like that. So you're easily uprooted. You can't be established in anything. Our true strength and our true stability comes from that righteous foundation. You know, and when our actions are rooted in truth, when our actions are rooted in goodness, then we become like a tree that has deep roots. When we become like a tree that has deep roots, we're unshaken by the storms of life. You see, that's why when I gave you all the definition of peace so many years ago, because I've probably said it 1,000 times, but peace is the ability to maintain and know identity in the face of chaos. That's peace. So how is it you're able to do that? Because you're tapped into the values of your roots. You are tapped into the well. Remember, the well remains unchanged. The village is on fire. You know, the invaders, the colonialists, the Dutch, the Portuguese, the English, the French, the Italians, they've come into the village to attack and to enslave. But the well is unchanged. The surface of the well, the water on the surface is still calm. You know, when you look at we could look at a precept that supports that Proverbs that I just said. We look at Psalms 1:3. Psalms 1:3, that person is like a tree that's planted by the streams of water, which yields fruit in its due season, and whose leaves do not wither, and whatever they do prospers, right? So again, you start to see proper planting, you know, will lead to proper prosperity. You know, when you have a life that is grounded in virtue, you know, and your roots are virtuous, your values are virtuous. When we say high value person, what is your value? My value is virtue. My value are the divine principles, right? If my life is rooted in divine principles and my life is rooted in virtue, then I'll flourish. Even when times are challenging, I will flourish because of what I'm rooted in. Now that requires, you know, an uncompromising stance. regardless of what's going on around you, right? It's like when people say things like, well, if you were on a desert island and you have nothing else to eat but a pig, would you eat the pig even though it's unclean? Nah, I wouldn't eat the pig. Wouldn't eat the pig. Times can be challenging, but I don't have to sacrifice my value. You know, you have some countries in this world that are Muslim. It's some of the most poorest countries in the world. Somehow those people figure out a way to eat without having to eat the hog. You know, why do we got to go back to eating the hog? You know, they figuring it out. I'll figure it out. You can eat palm stalk. You know how many trees you can eat? People don't even know you can actually eat the bark of certain trees and you can eat the stalk of certain trees. You know, because there's not only carbohydrates in them, but there's very small amounts of protein that are in them as well. That's a survival show. All right, so we'll do a survival show another time. Don't get me off into that, because you know how I am about that. I like survivalism. But anyway, I would ask you all, you know, what are the roots that keep you grounded? That's one question. How do you nourish those roots? You know, I really encourage you to write that down so you can look at it in your face. What are the roots? Because you might say like, oh, my family's my root. Cool. I'm with that all day, family vibes. How do you nourish your family? You know, and not in a passive way. Whenever I come by, I send them little memes and stuff. That ain't nothing. You ain't doing nothing. When you have a plant that you're growing, or you have a tree, or you have a garden, you don't take care of a garden passively. For some who work a 9-to-5 job and they have to leave the house to work, before they leave, before the sun gets high, they water their garden. And then when they come home from work, while in the cool of the evening or the afternoon, they weed their garden. You know, or they're spraying for bugs and things like that, right? So it's not passive. It's a very active sense of nourishment. When you start to write these things down and really take it seriously, you start to emphasize and encourage self-awareness inside of you. And that's the first step to strengthening your roots. Like if you do have family, you know, grandma, grandpa, whatever, be honest about how you treat them. I got family members I got to call back right now. Like right now. You know, I'm honest about that. I mean, I just said it on film. One of them I know is watching. I'm going to call you. You know, a couple of them might be watching. I'm going to call all y'all. I'm calling everybody. But that's the thing. It's like, be honest about that first, because that's your first step, the self-awareness, to strengthening those roots. When you're building a strong foundation, you got to know your values, like I said, and your values sit at the core of who you are, you know, and they guide your decisions. They shape your relationships. They define your purpose. So you want to take time to identify what your core values are, right? Don't just quickly, well, I'm a good person and I believe in the Most High, or I believe there's a higher power and I treat people like, chill out for a second, calm down, be quiet, and really reflect on it in a real way. What are your values honesty? No, everything I say, you're going to be like, yeah? Are they honesty? Are they faith? Are they service to others? Are they growth? Now, if you was like, yep, check. Give yourself to really be honest and think about it. So if I turn around and say, well, when's the last time you truly sacrificed yourself for another and served another person? And you, or you make up a lie, then that's not one of your values. Cross that one out. Re-examine that. You know, if it's faith, right? I broke down faith before. It's that truth. How tapped in are you? Truth. How well do you listen? Do you think you know everything about yourself already? So when someone speaks, you're like, yeah, I'm like that, you know. Or are you really truly listening? You know, to clarify your values or knowing your values, it helps you to stay rooted even when life feels uncertain. And to clarify your values Consider moments when you felt deeply aligned, or when you felt deeply out of sync with yourself. In those moments, what really matters to you is what's revealed. You'll know it right there in that moment. For some of us, it could be a quiet walk, and you start to realize that freedom of movement really matters to me. It's being able to walk around. For others, it may be maybe there's conflict in your home, and it just throws everything out of alignment, like maybe even your health, like everything. And you start to realize, like, okay, peace at home matters a lot to me. So pay attention to the times when you felt really in tune and really aligned, and what was happening there to make you say, like, yeah, this is it. This is it right here. And then pay attention to the times when you did not feel that and you felt completely off, to help you. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, there's a passage in the Tibetan Book of the Dead that says, do not be distracted, remain focused on the clear light. And that's a form of that. Like, what is the clear light? The importance of staying connected to your foundational truths, or the foundational truths. Let me put it that way, because people get sneaky and say, well, it's my truth. No such thing. Your truth, I'm going to put an equal sign, is your opinion and your feelings. My truth equals feelings. My truth does not equal the truth. People try to use that term to shut you down. Well, it's my truth and you have your truth. No, you got your feelings and your opinion, But anyway, when you start looking at foundational truths that exist even in the midst of chaos, sometimes your feelings are the chaos. If you can remain focused, like the Tibetan Book of the Dead says, remain focused on the light that is within you. That clear light means you're prioritizing your higher values over passing distractions. So you're learning to choose alignment over impulse. I want to stay aligned with this character of a righteous and divine person, but somebody just says something crazy to me, I'm about to go. That's a distraction. And you might have an emotional impulse that flares up in you, and you have to sort of understand that there's a difference between that impulse and that impulse and actually being in alignment. One of the first things I want you to realize is the connectedness of your roots. Roots intertwine with one another. So in life, you have connections. You have connections with your family, you have connections with community, and you have connections with the divine. And they all act as a support network. And if you invest your time in building meaningful relationships and nurturing those bonds, you now create a stronger root network. It becomes a nerve network. So if you kind of can think about the people who are in your life who strengthen and encourage you, how can you deepen those connections? How can you strengthen the roots, that you might have with those who you really feel a certain sense of kinship and love for? Relationships, just like roots, they need attention and they need care. And you always want to remember that, man. And whether you're looking at, again, some of the wisdom shared by Khalil Gibran in terms of the internal relationships that we have with each other, or you're looking at what's given to us in Proverbs and Psalms, the value of rooting in a peaceful and strong place and how that grows us, or you're looking at the rituals that create community. One of the important things to think about here is that rituals are like water for your roots. You gotta have rituals. You've heard me say this before, without ritual, there is no community. Without rituals, there is no community. But without ritual, your roots don't survive. So for some of you, your roots are daily journaling. For others, your roots are spending time in nature. Or your rituals, excuse me. Your rituals may be spending time in nature. Or your rituals may be a daily affirmation or a daily prayer for some of you. But those consistent practices, not only do they keep you grounded, but they keep you aligned with your purpose. So this becomes the watering for the roots to strengthen you. So you want to always pay attention with your consistency. Sometimes, again, I ask people questions. Do you do this, do that? They always talk about what they did back in the days. Well, I used to do this, or they do something once. It's just like in a relationship. If you're with someone and they say, hey, I want to do a date night with you. Let's say something like that. The whole year goes by, you do a date night once. And you say, well, didn't we do that? Not really. So it's the consistency of the practices that sends a message to the subconscious mind that your foundation matters. How would your subconscious mind know that righteousness and reciprocity and truth and balance and even-handedness and all of these different characteristics are important to you unless you begin to program the subconscious mind through your consistency? Over time, rituals become the well that you draw the strength from. You're going through a situation or you're feeling a certain kind of way. Say, man, I need to go take me a hike and take my my notepad with me, or my digital device, whatever you use to journal in. It could be a piece of bark and some charcoal, whatever. But I need to take my journaling tools with me, and I need to get out into nature, or I need to go cut my grandma's grass. Maybe that's a way that you kind of meditate. You put some music on and you go do some yard work, whatever it is. But that begins to become your strength. You see, and the more you do it over time, the more it becomes your strength. Not just one time. You might do something once, be like, oh, that was cool, I like that. Keep doing it, and watch what begins to happen. The rooting and the planting, even in your word sounds, becomes a critical thing. I'm just going to share this. We're going to close out in a minute. But the Quran, it speaks about, there's a verse in the Surah Ibrahim, or for somebody knows Abraham, 14:24, where it says, do you not see how Allah presents a parable? And it says that a good word is like a good tree whose roots are firmly fixed and its branches reach to the sky, right? So when you look at that verse, it's like a very beautiful way to illustrate the connection between strong roots and a functional you, or a prolific you. When it says that a good word, that's why it says, look at how Allah presents a parable to you. Look at the poetry of Allah. Because when a good word is given to you, a good parable, good poetry is given to you, it's like taking a tree and you plant it so well that you now have this connection between these strong roots and a very fruitful life. Your life becomes beautiful now because of the way you anchor and you nurture yourselves in good words, in good actions. Your impact now begins to extend beyond yourself. You see? So it's not just always turning in. To me, I find that disgusting. I've met people, and I don't mean to be so hostile when I say that word, but I just do not appreciate self-absorbed people. I find it so disgusting. I got to get mine, I got to do it for me. And I ain't really into helping other people. Like, go end yourself, like, really. But, when we anchor ourselves in good words and in good actions, our impact, what happens is that we reach others like the branch of a tree. Branches of a tree reach out. If you find yourself having challenges with being self-absorbed, and I'm not saying self-centered, there is a time to be self-centered. There is a time for that. But if you find yourself having trouble with being self-absorbed, I want you to visualize yourself, planting. I'm going to close out with this. Envision your roots are growing deeper and deeper and deeper into the soil. This is black Kemetic soil, land of the black faces, land of the black soil. And your roots are going down, and they're drawing strength, and they're drawing nourishment from the soil. The soil is giving it to you freely. And, you're starting to gain strength, not only from those roots, but you're gaining strength from your relationships. Do your relationships strengthen you? You're gaining strength from your values. You're gaining strength from your ritualistic practices. But you're a tree. You're a tree. Now, if you could take a deep breath right now and you feel the grounding energy that's around you, and just see yourself as a tree, and you feel that energy that's coming from your values, from your relationships, from your practices, and that grounding energy, it's flowing through you. You see, then you'll have a better sense in how to overcome challenges, through your rootage, if you will. In our next session, I'll touch on a little bit more on the value and the some of the things that we use to overcome some of those challenges, and most importantly, our ability to recognize storms. Sometimes they come and we don't even know we're in the middle of a freaking storm. Everything's going wrong, and we don't know, like, man, right now my roots are being tested. You're thinking it's something else, indigestion or something, or a little flu or something like that. I got gas. You don't even realize, man, this is some external pressure. You think it's all internal pressure. This external pressure that's coming, that's actually testing your values and testing your practices, and testing your relationship. Storms are inevitable. And whether you're in a relationship with another individual, and this is important, I just want to throw this out there, man. When you join a movement or an organization, ANU is a movement, so I'm speaking from ANU. We're not an organization, we're a movement. But when you join something, you're marrying yourself into a body. So if you can imagine marrying another person, it's inevitable that there's going to be storms. Every day isn't going to be awesome. You're going to have disagreements or whatever. It's the same thing when you marry yourself into a church or into a masjid or into a camp or into a movement. It's a marriage. So there are moments where you're going to have to pull from the strength of your foundation, because the storms or disagreements or conflicts or whatever, they're inevitable. But storms don't weaken roots. They reveal how deep your roots actually are. They don't weaken them. So each challenge that you have is an opportunity to grow stronger. Even in your relationship, you ever have a disagreement with your mate, and afterwards you find yourself saying, man, I really love this person. If you find yourself like, man, I got to figure out how to get away from this person. That shows you just how deeply or how shallow rooted the relationship actually is. All right. So I'll continue with some of this as we go forward. I also want to share that I have a musical offering. I know I haven't shared any music since the consecration, which was last year sometime. It's been a long time. I've had a lot going on. But you can find it's on all digital streaming platforms, and it's called Roots Strictly. You see how I did that? Roots Strictly. And it is about what you might imagine that it's about. But in particular, it's really a project that I really created for children, to be honest, or young people, to be honest with you. Not to say that adults can't get something out of it, but the way that I fashion the music. It's really some really foundational sort of lessons for a person to align themselves with the security of a better, greater, and more divine community, and to respect the cycles of nature and the cycles of people. So definitely check it out. It's on Bandcamp, it's on Spotify and Apple Music, iTunes, Deezer, Amazon, all the different places that you would get music. But definitely check it out. It's a 9-song little thing, because we're in the 9 series, and I think definitely you will enjoy it. And I would challenge you all to memorize. There's a song on there called "Rise of the Roots," and I would challenge you to memorize the dates that I give in that segment. That's really like, I created that really as a children's sing along, but I would encourage you to remember the dates and the significant moments in that. I would love to see you. We could do a challenge like on IG or social media, whatever, TikTok, and as long as we have TikTok, and see where we can go with that, if you can remember it. But that one, it's a good one to play for your babies, to help them, if you got any, help them memorize certain significant dates and the journey of those who would call ourselves Pan-Akebelonics, or Pan-Africans, or Pan-Shemetics, Afro-Shemetics. All right. So I want to thank you all for being with me this time and learning different ways that you could withstand challenges and be the tree that bends and doesn't break. And I would just ask that you take a moment to pause and reflect. Take a moment to assess your situations rather than reacting impulsively. Learn to lean on your support system, but at the same time, nourish and encourage your support system. Don't be afraid to seek help from those who are trusted loved ones, trusted elders. For some, if you need a trusted professional, so be it. But friends, family, spiritual guides, don't be afraid about asking for assistance in a respectful way, and make it a daily practice to revisit your values. Make it a daily practice, to revisit your practices. Tap in and use them as a compass to guide you in everything that you do. All right. So with that, like I said, we're doing a meet and greet today with new members of our ANU community, people who have gone through the orientation process and who have been vetted for their first level of vetting. We still, but I have to go, so I could be present for that. But we do that every month for the new people who come in. We give the community an opportunity to kick it with them. They can ask the community questions. The community can ask them questions. They can hear about what their orientation process was like, what made them want to be a part of such a dope, amazing, awesome, excellent, superb, magnificent. You could throw any adjective that you want to throw in there. Superfly for some of you who are a little older. Dynamite. Okay. Far out. You just keep throwing them in there. Community. So we sort of ask them those questions and things like that. All right. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming through. I am Chief Yuya, and I will see you at the next insight. And I always encourage you, if you want a deeper connection with roots and values that can help sustain you through the storms, and can help guide you through challenging times, I encourage you to apply for the ANU Life Global Ministries, or ANU Nation rather. Be a part of this community, apply for this community, and use it as an opportunity to share your well, to have your well opened up with resources so we can learn about you and see your treasure. What treasure do you have to offer to the community? Don't die and not share the map to that treasure. What's worse than that? Share that treasure. And as we all share treasure with each other. All right? Until such time, Shabbat Shalom.